Emily Elizabeth, and I'm the host of the What Fulfills You podcast, a show for and about individuals always seeking to be their best selves. On this show, we talk all about building the mindset, finding the right careers, creating meaningful relationships, and so much more. Welcome to the What Fulfills You podcast. Hello everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the What Fulfills You podcast. My name is Emily Elizabeth. I'm your host, and for today's episode, it's going to be a short bonus one and something that I kind of recently experienced, or maybe not so recent by the time this is released, but something I kind of observed in a recent experience of mine, and something that I saw, I think, fluctuate internally for me in how I was going to handle it. And I realized this had come up before and could also be really relevant for those of you who may find yourself in a similar situation in the future, or maybe if you have seen this come up for yourself. And with that being said, all of this is pertaining to sticking through tough moments, and instead of taking the shortcut out, actually just embracing the really uncomfortable feeling and allowing yourself to push through, because that is where growth occurs. So I've experienced this in many different parts of my life. I think especially as a former athlete, I experienced this on tough training days and tough practices and tough competitions and everything, where naturally when you're kind of down hard, you think about quitting, right? And you have a coach there and a support team that really emphasizes why this is not the time to quit, right? It also occurred to me that on a different aspect, I actually was in this wellness retreat, if you will, in Medellin, Colombia. And I did this, activity, practice, whatever, very optional, but decided to push and try it. And it's basically where you stand on these copper nails, and they are 100% okay for you, but they do, there's a bit of pain and also uncomfortableness. And so I remember when I stood up on these copper nails, I, of course, felt the extremely uncomfortable sensation. And that was where I really had to put my breath work and mindfulness to the test and tapped into what Thich Nhat Hanh talks about a lot, which is just being present and breathing in and recognizing the breath in and then breathing out, and then just continuously doing it. And it helps you bring the focus on the breath rather than anything else. And of course, there was a moment in that where I wanted to sit back down, which is, where I would be able to take off the pressure on my feet. Because guys, these are nails basically, or needles, nails, whatever, on the bottom of the feet. But I remember telling myself that I can hold it a little bit longer and it won't be that bad. And that ended up being true. And so I remember also sharing this with the girlfriend that I experienced this particular activity with over dinner. And I was telling her about how I was going through something somewhat uncomfortable in another part of life. And I reminded myself, similar to the copper nails, had I sat down and given up and, gotten off of those nails sooner than later, I would not have been able to test my limits and see how much I can grow through that and how it really all becomes mental. And so that copper nail activity ended up being a great reminder for me in a more personal life scenario where I really was able to tell myself, okay, don't give up quite yet, right? Don't kind of throw in the towel so soon. And for me in the personal life situation, it was very much revolving around, I guess at one point there were certain things in my life where I felt uncomfortable. I felt a little bit pushed to grow in a certain way. And I knew it for myself too, that it was overall a good thing for me to feel. However, and by the way, also just for important context, I am recording this while still being in Medellin, Colombia, and I have been here for basically nearly the past 2 months of summer. And there was a point during the time here where I contemplated simply throwing in the towel and going back to New York. It was kind of focused around a certain event that came up, but also, just other thoughts that came to mind. But it was like the foundation of it was because of lack of comfort and knowing that I always had the option to just fly back to New York, go back to kind of a life I once knew there and everything that's very comfortable, right? And I think that's the thing that I've enjoyed a lot, though, about being here in Medellin, Colombia. It was very unexpected and not quite planned. I had intentions to not be in New York this summer or for most of the summer, but I had no idea I was going to be in South America, if that makes sense. And I think that's the beauty of it, is I've been able to grow a lot and observe a lot while being here in a country that I wouldn't have, I think, naturally picked. And I think that's also something else I shared with a friend too, that I'm really glad that I was able to live here for almost 2 months, because I think it's a lot easier for me to have gone to Milan or Paris or a lot of these different cities, especially in Europe, that I, feel like is kind of almost like a cop-out in a way, where it's like, yeah, like these are places I love and I'm naturally drawn to them and I know them pretty well, so I would go back, right? And so going to a new place like Medellin, Colombia, I think tested those limits basically, and once again pushed me in a position to grow. And I guess overall, I'm sharing this with you guys because even for me, I was in a position where I wanted to tap out, basically. I wanted to be like, oh, should I just go back to New York, I remember being mindful in that moment, thinking, okay, this is something I definitely have to share with the audience once I really gather myself and work through whatever I'm working through, because it was uncomfortable. It was really uncomfortable. And I think all those moments that feel uncomfortable, like many of us hear about, that is exactly where growth happens, where you learn how to stick through something that you don't feel like sticking through, or rather it's hard emotions and hard feelings to feel, but it's always on the other side where you recognize where that benefited you in the growth. And considering this podcast is focused on personal growth in all areas of life, I felt compelled to share this for that reason. And I hope that the next time, or maybe it's right now, maybe this was the perfect time for you to hear this, where you currently feel like tapping out, going back to something you're more comfortable with, going to do something you are, like what to expect more, right? And I want to preface, there are extreme situations where that may have to be the case too. For me, in this time, while it definitely pushed me to a lot of uncomfortable feelings, it was also because of my own past experience of knowing that getting over this hump is where the growth occurs. That's what enabled me to be like, push through it, Emily, right? Like, feel it, embrace what you're currently feeling, and just simply go through it and work through it. And sometimes it just takes one time for that to happen, for you to also understand what I mean, and for it to be easier the following time where you're faced with another decision. Do I go back to what I know? Do I go do what's the most comfortable, the quickest way out? Or do I stick through and stay just a bit longer so I can really, experience and feel what that growth can feel like on the other side. So anyways, I hope that is some good food for thought. And I hope wherever you are listening to this in the world, that you choose the harder decision. You choose the less comfortable one. Because at the end of the day, those decisions help pave the path for your life. And you will certainly reap the dividends later on when you make those decisions that are uncomfortable and force you to grow. And hopefully you will thank me at some point as well. So anyways, you guys, wishing you all the best and wherever you are at on your journey of personal growth. And speaking of personal growth, if you are curious for more mindful prompts, questions, and good conversations or journal prompts, you can find the What Fulfills You card game at whatfulfillsyou.com. It ships worldwide, and you can get 10% off with the code WhatFulfillsYou10 at checkout. That is linked in the show notes, and these questions are very much geared towards personal growth and development. So I hope these are also useful for you guys. Thanks again for tuning in to the bonus episode. I will chat with you all next time.